Well, as regular Capital listeners will know, that music was first heard about 2 years ago to introduce Elvis Brandenburg Kremmen. Yes, Captain Kremmen. And I trundled off about 2.5 hours down the motorway to Kremmen's workshop. And what did I discover? Kremmen was, in fact, Kenny. Well...
She's guessed my vital secret, folks.
I should say congratulations. I mean, that character has now become a paperback book, which I think works very well. Are you pleased with your book?
Yes, it's very colourful. It's all in colour, right from the front to the back. And because of the book, they're starting a TV cartoon series, and a play of the film, and a ballet of the play of the film of the book, of the television series, of the play of the radio show.
Captain Kremmen, where did the name come from?
A friend of mine over in the States who is Mel Blanc's son. You know Mel Blanc, who does the Bugs Bunny voices. Of which this is one.
You are listening to Capital Radio. You are listening to Capital Radio. Boy, have you got the wrong station.
Well, his son is a friend of mine, and he does radio programs as well. He does very silly bits on record that he sells to all the American radio stations. Silly bits like this.
Here we are in Bottleneck, New Jersey, where the town's housewives have agreed to help us test Kremmen's delicate fabric detergent. Mrs. Murney, did it surprise you when that delicate snowy white piece of lace came out of your washer?
It certainly did. 5 minutes ago, that delicate snowy white piece of lace was my electric blanket.
And he does silly little bits like that, you see, on disc for radio stations. And he uses the brand name Kremmen's in them all. So in the first series, I used to start off each episode with a track from this LP full of funny bits. And I just thought, well, seeing as the product's called Kremmen, I might as well call the chap who's zapping around the universe Kremmen as well.
And so it went on, but I do remember in the early days Kremmen being quite different to the way he is now. So if we go back 2 years, the situations you put him into, was he always going to come out butch and the all-time hero?
Ooh, a mountain of muscle, aye. But in the old days, he was much more violent than he is now. We've cleaned him up since then. Here he was in the very first episode, being terribly naughty with people's limbs.
I first discovered I had superpowers when I was at school. One day, a bully who used to terrorize all the kids in my class picked on me.
Hey, Kremmen,
What?
come over here. I want to kick sand in your face.
I instantly took him by the arms and tied a knot in his throat. He tried to apologize.
I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, I mistook this garbled cry of agony as an insult and proceeded to swing him round my head by his ears. Okay, bully, you give in? Oh, so you won't give in, huh? The kids gasped in amazement as I took his left leg in one hand, his right leg in the other, and with superhuman strength proceeded to pull them apart. He gurgled in agony. The headmaster was furious.
Kremmen, you just can't go around dissecting young boys. It's bad for the school image.
You see? Very gory.
Sam Peckinpah will be proud of you. Now, I would like to know how long it took in the early days to get something like that together. I mean, so many special effects there.
Well, in the early days, each episode was about 2.5 minutes, but now it's sort of, I get carried away with myself, and last week's episode was 6.5 minutes, so it'll probably end up as an hour show. But in the early days, to do a 2.5 minute episode, it used to take me about 2 hours.
And how much of it was scripted, or did you just do it, flights of fantasy, and take off?
Well, then I used to make it as I went along, which was okay, but it sort of wandered around a lot then. It didn't have a sort of a basic story, but now I've got characters in it. I need to type it, so what I do is I sit down for about an hour and a half typing away on my trusty typewriter here. This is the actual typewriter, folks. And I type away like mad with 2 fingers. And out comes a story, like sort of this. This is the part where they were escaping from the Thargoids, Maggie. And what they did was, the Thargoids, seeing that they were getting away, they shot a glob of putron at their escape ship, you see. And putron, as everybody knows, is the smelliest substance known to man. So here's the bit where the putron was on its way to gludge Captain Kremmen and his crew.
By now, the Thargoids will definitely know we've escaped, right?
I guess so.
They've probably shot some of this stuff at our ship.
Oh, no.
We gazed out of the rear porthole and saw a glowing green lump of sticky, throbbing goo slowly approaching us. Schatz, gewaltig, Krappen Sie Dinkelbaum, Captain! Don't panic! It's got to eat its way through the hull first. Suddenly, there was a mighty lurch as the putron hit the ship. I cradled Carla in my big muscly arms as the goo began to stench its way towards us.
Oh, Captain, what are we gonna do? Look, it's cracking the porthole.
It seemed to be alive as it glurped its way through the window.
Captain, I have an idea.
What is it, Doctor?
I always carry this with me in case of emergencies.
He opened his intergalactic space case, pulled out a cassette machine, and put in a cassette marked Tony Blackburn Sings.
Baby, I need your love.
Think it's gonna work, Doc?
Well, Tony Blackburn's singing usually gets heard of audiences.
Oh, Captain, I think I prefer the putron.
Hey, just a minute. Look, something's happening.
Another day, another night.
Sure enough, as we stood and watched, the goo stopped dead in its tracks.
And, of course, they all escaped in the end.
Kenny, what about some of the special effects you use here in the studio? Can you take us through a few?
Yes, well, the effects to make Captain Kremmen sound even butcher than he is, we have a thing called an astronic equalizer, which adds butchness to voices. Like, for instance, if you wanted to add a sort of a bassy type Bill Mitchell 194 type sound, you bring in the bass there a little like that. And if you want to sound like a Krell, you switch in a thing called a phaser, which sounds like this.
You evil swine, Kremmen. You'll never get away with this.
Fine. Now, apart from that, you've got a load of cartridges. Which special effects have you used most?
Well, maggots, we have a thing called a cartridge here, as you can see, folks, called Kremmen AIDS. And these are the things I use most of all on the Kremmen series. They're effects like, for instance, the Thron Ray that kills everything in its path. And then we have the electron gun that also kills everything in its path and goes like this. And then we have a straight Smith & Wesson 45 that goes... And then we have the sound effect of the villain falling to the floor, like that.
And your own tonsils, Gitfinger. He's gone out of the series at the moment, but his voice was rather good. Let's hear it.
You really want to hear it?
I'd love to, thank you.
Right. It takes a bit of doing that. Your throat's got to be in the right mood. But when you get it together, it's really rambunctious. You know what I mean?
I do indeed.
Right.
What about the music you use? Because this is all part of the excitement. How do you select it?
I just pick the appropriate stuff, like terribly exciting passages deserve terribly exciting pieces of music, and there are lots of those around in the classical department. Like, for instance, an LP called Danse Infernale, which has got lots of evil pieces on it. It's got this one from Saint-Saëns, and it's called Danse Macabre. Lots of people have asked for that one. It's rather good, isn't it? And it sort of invokes sort of, yikes, what's happening nextness.
Do you ever find you have to kind of alter records, or you usually use them as they are?
Well, there's so many mood records around that you don't really have to. And mostly the classics help because they have dynamic stuff like this. Which reeks of action, what?
Absolutely. Now, what about going back over some of your favourite moments in the series? Would you find that very difficult?
Well, he's done so many things, so many dynamic, muscle-filled adventures. It's difficult to pick one, but one that sticks out in my memory is when he was confronted by the king of the Thargoids, you know, the type ones, and this guy had him at the point of a laser gun, but Kremmen had a trick up his sleeve.
Yes, and now I have you once again in my grip.
Yes, but you've forgotten one thing, Gort.
What is that?
You've forgotten about my bionic left foot with the big toe that unscrews like this. And when I join this bit with this other bit and put that into this alongside the twiddly bit that fits into there, this drops down and joins the other section, which turns into this.
Ugh, a space cannon!
Right. Grab him, Carla.
Okay, Captain. This way, you horrible blob.
Out in the main square, the Mudmen had rounded up all the other Thargoidians. I spoke to them through my space hailer.
Attention! We are taking your evil leader back to Earth for psychiatric help and brain removal. Now is your chance to prove that you can mend your ways and become decent space citizens.